to me, any loan is effectively BNPL.
Giving young people loans to buy things, usually that doesn't end really well.
So BNPL has taken a form of study now, pay later, right? We have young population who will get married. We spend a lot of money. So it could be marry now, pay later.
Once I go to this something.com,
Right.
buy a TV, say it's on BNPL. What's happening in the background out here? Money was, is, and will never be free. Nothing without GST these days. Let's talk about the stuff that does not get talked about in online sales, and we just get carried away by great deals, great discounts.
Be disciplined, repay on time, and don't go after everything.
Hello everyone and welcome to Mind Your Karza with One Finance, a show where we help you understand and improve your relation with debt products like credit cards, loans and much more. On today's episode, we're going to talk about BNPL, Buy Now, Pay Later. My guest Parijat Garg, Digital Lending and Fintech Consultant. Parijat, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thank you very much. It is really an honor to be here.
Yeah, great to have you.
Likewise.
So let's start with BNPL. We know that it stands for Buy Now, Pay Later, but it's boomed. Here we are in the year 2024, and I think since the last 6 to 8 years, this segment has just totally boomed.
Absolutely.
Can we just understand the evolution of this product?
If we look at BNPL, generally, to me, any loan is effectively BNPL because I'm buying a product or a service for my own need, and then I'm paying for it later. So if I look at home loans, effectively I'm buying a house today and paying later. So isn't that BNPL? But what has happened with this term, like you rightly mentioned, we have innovated a new product, which is essentially a simplified payment solution for convenience of people. And let me give you an example. We have seen the e-commerce booming over last so many years, and it's like nearly touching $50-60 billion industry. Now, when I'm buying a product on an e-commerce platform, I might like a product which I cannot afford right now. Yeah. And I need a payment solution that allows me to purchase that product and use it. But the decision is today. And that's where BNPL really fits in, which allows me to buy that product, which is perhaps beyond my affordability today, but makes it simply very convenient for me to do it even at an e-commerce site, which is just within few minutes. And that is where BNPL really fits in.
Yeah, I want to understand this from two perspectives. First is the product which this is used for mostly. And second is the kind of consumer who takes this, the major demographic that uses a BNPL. Because I believe that both these two are quite unique as compared to what we used to usually take loans for at one point of time, which used to be cars, homes and things like that. So
absolutely.
What is the most financed product by BNPL and what are the type of people using it mostly?
So like I mentioned, one is that the e-commerce, the online purchases actually drove BNPL significantly. But now BNPL is being used even in in-store purchases. Now, the origin of this was consumer electronics. Because consumer electronics has picked up in last one decade, right? And it started with maybe initially laptops, with initial feature phones, and then gradually becoming smartphones, and now the phones are like even as expensive as 50,000-60,000 rupees.
Yeah.
An average selling price for phones have also risen from about 10,000-12,000 rupees to almost 21,000. Now, if I'm aspiring to buy a 30,000 rupee phone as a youngster, it may be beyond my limits. Yeah. And that is where this really works well. So to answer your question, the cohort that really gets attracted to BNPL would be the young millennials, people in the age group of 21 to 35. But having said that, it does not mean that the older generation is not using BNPL. If I give my own example, I use BNPL quite often, right? But maybe I'm selective for certain type of products. Maybe if I'm buying a laptop, which is say 1.5 lakh rupees, if I'm buying a television, which is say 2 lakh rupees, I might opt for BNPL. And there are reasons that we can discuss subsequently. But younger generation who's living on aspiring products, they want to look at how to use these products, which could be phone, which could be a good laptop, it could be like furnishing the house. All of these products are now available through BNPL.
Yeah. Giving young people loans to buy things, usually that doesn't end really well. The experiences of other countries have kind of shown that, and the young people tend to get carried away with too much of loans. People of my generation think that maybe taking a loan at such a young age to buy something like a laptop might be a little bit dangerous. So you think that this thing might get over? When I say thing, I mean lending to the young in such a big way. Isn't that probably against what we've learned or we've grown up with?
In a way, yes, what you're saying is right. And I think we'll have to look at it from two perspectives, right? One is from the people or the consumer perspective, right? When we're looking at it from consumer perspective, it's a product that offers affordability. It's a product that offers convenience. It's a product that is available at the point of purchase, at the checkout, right? And it allows me to fulfill my current aspirations. So in a way, it's a very beneficial product for consumers. But on the other hand, like you rightly mentioned, as a lender, the philosophy goes that you have to be very careful. You have to look at people who've slightly matured. You want to give loans who are to people who are less risky. So this is a very entry-level product. It allows youngsters to taste a credit product, right? Which otherwise, in past, we would have tasted when we would have bought like maybe a two-wheeler or maybe a car. That was the first entry product for most of people of our generation. Yeah. But here today, people use credit much earlier. Second thing is that BNPL by itself is not seen as a credit product because the name sounds so fancy. It's very attractive. It's a very millennial sort of a term. And it's available so integrated, so embedded into the purchasing process that as a consumer, I don't see it as a loan. I see it as just convenience. So that's why it is really picking up well. Sure. Now, from a lender, this is, like I said, it is an entry product. So they would want to test out the new generation. It can go either ways. And we have seen stories from other countries where it has really gone overboard. And the NPA, the default rates, have been really high in some of the pockets. And India also, some of the players have burned their hands with BNPL over lending. But to me, I think every loan product goes through that cycle. Sure. We are in that stage where if this consolidates well, it's a great product for consumers. It's a great product for lenders to work with. And I think India is a credit-hungry country where we are like deeply underpenetrated. So this allows a lot of opportunities for everyone.
So from the lender's perspective, what are the growth and challenges now going forward? Because this industry is now, I think, at least 8 years old. Right. How do you see this going forward from a lender's perspective only?
Sure. So when we look at lender's perspective, there are different forms of the same product, right? One was how the electronic financing started with zero-cost EMIs. So there were NBFCs which were offering that product, right, which was consumer loans. Then there were several credit card companies which started offering EMIs on credit card, which is also a form of BNPL, right, where you're buying product today and then you're paying over EMI. And the BNPL in the current format today, right? So I believe that there is a huge opportunity because we have a growing younger population which needs different kind of products, right? And it started with just electronic products earlier or products earlier. Now it has moved to services. We have requirements of skill upgrade, right? So BNPL has taken a form of study now, pay later, right? We have young population who will get married. We spend a lot of money. So it could be marry now, pay later, right?
Okay.
Or you can actually travel abroad, which is again an aspiration today. Maybe it is to Azerbaijan or like some of these exotic locations. Yeah. And you spend like maybe about 1-2 lakh rupees. But you can travel now and pay later. Sure. So it's taking different avatars, right, which is very, very interesting for youngsters. And it allows to fulfill different kind of needs.
Yeah. We should probably qualify the marry now, pay later a little bit. Tinge that with a little bit of reality. Okay, let's shift chairs now and sit from a consumer's perspective. What if I'm someone who wants to choose a good BNPL and I come to you that I'm doing this for the very first time? Right. What would be your suggestion to me? How would you approach this? I mean, what's the kind of advice you'd give me?
So first thing is that one needs to spot that this is a loan product because it is so embedded at times when you're purchasing. If someone is saying a term like pay later or someone is saying post pay, or if there is a term that is being used like low cost EMI or zero cost EMI, each of these should ring a bell in your mind that this is BNPL. That's point number one.
Yep.
Point number two is that one needs to read the fine prints because this is loan, which means that you are getting into credit cycle. If you don't pay up, this can lead to bad impacts for you in future. And these bad impacts could be either a high late payment fees or a high penalty, which may not be visible upfront, but it will come up only when you get into that situation. And third is that it can also have impact on your credit score, which also has a deep impact. So one needs to be first like spotting all of these points early on. The other aspect is that when you're looking at BNPL, look at a known brand, which has an RBI-backed lender behind it. And now last year, RBI came out very, very clearly to make this entire process a lot more transparent. So you need to look at the logos of the lenders who are actually behind the platform. You can research about them. You can read about them in online reviews, Google Play stores, give you ratings. Don't just go by ratings, but look at reviews to understand exactly what is happening. And also talk to your peer group because they may have different experiences. So pick up lenders who have good history, who do not use mal practices to kind of recollect money from you in case you are in a difficult situation, who are regulated because they will follow all the guidelines, and then enter into this product.
So if a BNPL is the very first loan that I'm taking, that brings me to the credit cycle, right? I mean, officially to my first loan.
Absolutely.
So how does this work in the background? Like I don't have a credit score. And let's say I'm on a popular e-commerce website where there's a sale going on,
right?
An online sale going on. And as it is the norm these days that let's say that I want to buy a 30,000 rupees phone or a TV or something.
Right.
I've never taken a loan. I obviously don't have a credit score. Okay. So what happens in the background here? Once I go to this something.com,
right,
buy a TV and say it's on BNPL, what's happening in the background out here?
So in the background, it's like a loan process. Earlier, like if I take you 10 years back, these used to be two separate transactions. I will apply for a loan if I want to buy something, get an approval. I'll go to a dealer or a retailer, purchase the product, and use this money to pay the loan.
Correct.
Now, these are integrated into a single transaction where I am on that .com website and I transact. And if I'm picking up 30,000 rupee phone, I see that there is a zero cost EMI offering on that. I go through the process, which is essentially a loan process where my KYC details would be asked for. They will be shared by this .com with an RBI approved lender.
Correct.
The lender will do underwriting process, which is essentially the loan decision making process, and they will give the approval. As soon as the approval comes in, my transaction for the purchase of the smartphone gets completed. And all of this happens within a minute, right? This is like really, really real time. And to answer your question about, I don't have a credit history, but lenders are looking at this product for new to credit, as we call in our terminology, who are very young, who do not have any past background of credit. And we see almost 40 to 50% of customers who are not having any background also getting BNPL products. So that's why it is a great entry product.
Sure. Let's get down into low-cost EMIs. Okay, when I hear things like zero-cost EMIs, BNPs, someone's footing the bill.
Absolutely.
Money is not free.
Nothing is free.
Nothing
is free.
Money is, and will never be free.
True.
What's under the hood? How do these products really work?
Right. So let me draw an analogy to credit cards, right? So the principles are similar. Now, credit cards, when I'm transacting on any .com or any in-store purchase, the merchant or the dealer who's actually selling the product bears the transaction cost, right? And that gets distributed at the back end with the banks, with Visa or MasterCard, who are like the network providers. And that's where the money gets distributed. And typically for credit cards, this could be anywhere between 1 to 2% of the transaction value. Now, BNPL works on very similar principle. Like you rightly mentioned, nothing is free. So to me as a consumer, I am getting a zero cost EMI. So for me, the decision is very clear that instead of paying, say, 30,000 rupees upfront, why don't I pay in 4 EMIs? That's very, very clear. So, but at the back end, either the phone manufacturer, which might have been running a scheme, and they will give some discount on the MRP of that phone, and that amount could be, say, anywhere between 3 to 6%. And that money then gets distributed across the financier, and any players who are involved in this entire transaction. And that is the component which covers for the interest, which is towards this 30,000 rupee loan.
So, as a consumer, if I'm taking a 30,000 zero cost EMI, 7,500 into 4, that's 30,000.
Correct.
But somewhere I'm paying some cost also. One of the most popular costs I think is processing fees.
Processing fees.
And there's obviously GST on that, 18%.
That's right.
Nothing without GST these days.
Correct.
But that processing fee is from my pocket.
That is true.
And that becomes someone's income somewhere.
Absolutely.
How does that work?
So you're right that either you can have a zero cost, zero interest EMI. So there are products like these, and they are of course targeted towards slightly premium customers. Then there are low cost, zero interest BNPL.
Correct.
And there could be low cost, low interest BNPL. So there could be three variations of this.
For three different type of customers.
For the three different kind of customers, right? And what one needs to look at is what is that cost, right? Sometimes we believe that we're just hearing zero interest, but there's zero cost, low cost, like you may rightly mention. Now that low cost could be just a marketing promotion, right? But if it is say a 500 rupees or 600 rupees cost, a processing fees with the GST, it turns out to be say 750 or so. Now that is the cost that I'm actually bearing on this phone. Am I getting that much of benefit? And that's the calculation that one needs to do. And a lot of these costs were hidden earlier. Now, last year, again, the regulator came out very clearly to make this more transparent. So every platform now needs to describe what is called as APR, annual percentage rate. So essentially, it's the collective cost, which will include your the cost for processing as well as any other cost that might go in. So one needs to look at that, and if it is still making sense, then it's a great option for you.
Yeah, so now let's take this new to credit guy who took his first mobile phone, 30,000 rupees on a BNPL. He didn't have any credit history.
Right.
Let's fast forward maybe 5 or 10 years where he now has a credit history. Thankfully, has paid all his loans on time, but also has a credit card now. Now I'm trying to figure that he has a credit card and he's got BNPL. There is a zero cost offer for him, which is a loan.
Correct.
Versus he can just swipe the card and buy the product straight away.
Right.
So this market has become such that if he takes the zero cost EMI, he'll get a better deal.
Possibly.
So A, why is that happen? And B, now what would we tell this guy? Like, what should I choose between the two? Here is a credit card I can just swipe it and I get reward points.
Right.
Okay. And B, here is a zero cost EMI. How do I choose? What do I do?
So
assuming that I'm repaying on time. Huh?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's important.
No, I think that's important. That's absolutely important. So I think it's a pure financial decision there, right? Time value of money tells us that if I'm paying something later, maybe over 4 EMIs, that is much better than paying something today, right? And like say for credit cards, the reward points generally would translate into maybe at best, like say 0.5%, even if there's a cashback of 1% on 30,000, that may translate to just about 300 rupees, right? But whereas in certain cases, you might find that the BNPL discount offers could be even as high as 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, even 3,000 rupees just by using the BNPL product. So financially, it would clearly make sense that you're getting discount of say 1,000, maybe 2,000 rupees on buying the product itself. Second, you are actually not paying everything upfront or maybe in 45 days, but you are paying over say 120 days. So logically, like if I'm looking at from a purely financial mind, BNPL would make sense. And that's why I said like even people like us who may have credit cards may still go for BNPL because it logically, financially makes sense.
Yeah. I want to talk about the finer print now. First is credit score. How does that get impacted with these kind of loans? Okay, because these are probably smaller ticket, 30,000 smaller items.
Right.
I have to repay them on time. And let's talk about the credit cycle from someone who's brand new. And how can these BNPL actually help me to build a good credit history?
Right.
Or mess up if I don't pay on time. Okay?
Absolutely.
Let's start from there. So how does the credit score get?
It's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
So one can use this very, very effectively to build the credit history. Prior to BNPL's evolution, most people would either start with a two-wheeler or a gold loan as the entry product. Those were like the popular entry products for someone to start building credit history. And they were difficult ones because unless you have need, it becomes difficult. But BNPL is a product which is actually age neutral and gender neutral, right? Two-wheelers in India still is dominated by male population in terms of purchases. Yeah. So it allows the wider population to come in. And if you take a loan, it starts earlier. BNPLs were not getting reported to the credit bureaus, so they were not getting accounted for in your credit score.
Okay.
But for last, I think about 4 years now, there has been a regulation that all of these have to be also reported into the credit bureau. Now that means that every time you use a BNPL product, it starts getting into your credit history. And like you rightly mentioned, if I'm paying on time, if I'm using that very, very judiciously, it will positively start building my credit history. And if I get a good credit score, then I can possibly get a credit card, which can give me much more options. It can allow me to take other kind of loans, which could be at much lower costs and fulfill my other aspirations. But on the other hand, if I mess up, because this is so easy today that if I'm on .com and I was there to purchase only a smartphone, but I now see a deal which actually sells me a 20,000 rupee earbud along with it. And also maybe a laptop, and there are like so many things which are happening with that $1 billion a day sale. Now, suddenly I end up purchasing more than what I was intending to. And this all looks simple because it's all click of a button.
Always.
Correct? Yeah. But when it comes to the payment date, which would be when the salary hits my account,
Correct.
That is when the reality comes to my forefront. And that is where it becomes difficult, right? Maybe the one EMI might be easy to pay, I can arrange resources, but then I have to do this for 3 months, 4 months. Some of the expensive products can have like a 12-month, 24-month EMI. And I need to plan for that long. I need to think about that I should be able to pay for that EMI. And that is where things go awry. And if that goes wrong, then I can get into debt trap. And then the penalty fees kicks in, which that zero cost EMI suddenly becomes like a very heavy cost EMI.
I was actually going to come to that. What's the dark side of BNPLs? One, like you said, penalties. Two,
Correct.
The kind of interest rates that we have to pay. Three, what can happen to my credit score? Let's talk about the stuff that that does not get talked about in online sales, and we just get carried away by great deals, great discounts. So what's the dark side of BNPL that our audience out there should be aware of when they're going for this?
Right. So one, like you rightly mentioned, is the penalties. If you miss EMIs, whatever you purchase, the onus is on you. You have to pay for it. Whether you have to pay for it in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever, that is a different cycle, but you have to still pay for it. And if you don't pay for it, the interest rates that kick in or the penalty fees that can kick in could be very high, could be even 24 to 48%. And that's significantly high. Right? And it can just convert that purchase into a nightmare. And if you have so many such things, then it can lead to a debt trap. The second thing that happens is, if I'm paying late, it starts to impact my credit score. And if I don't pay for it, it can actually plummet my credit score down to 300, which is the lowest score. And it takes maybe at times 2 years, 3 years to recover from that situation. Wow. So that kind of blocks you from any future credit access, right? And it can actually impact, like, if you want to study for post-graduation afterwards, then getting an education loan could also become difficult. And that could have a much more lifelong impact on you because you're delaying your education, which is like so critical for one to get better employment. So one has to be really careful, even though it might be a 30,000 rupee phone, which could have been avoided, but because of a miscalculation there, you're impacting much more about your future. So that's, I think, very, very critical. The other aspect is about potential frauds, right? Like I think you brought up that point that could someone get into a wrong website, or what kind of reason that you're using BNPL for, right? I need to be careful about my aspirations. I can get everything in the world, right? But I have to plan for it. Maybe today vacation is important. I can use BNPL. Nothing wrong about it. But should I give like maybe a space of 3-4 months to repay for it and then plan for maybe a product purchase? Just not because the sale is next month, I get into too many purchases. So I think one needs to space it out. Make sure that whatever products that you're using, whatever BNPL you're using, you have money to repay for.
Yeah. I want to just, before we wind up, I want to go into the shady apps business. You just mentioned about how you need to be very careful who you're taking a loan from.
Right.
And since this all happens in click, click, click,
Correct.
Right? You could just be baited by some website out there, and before you know it, you've already taken a loan, but you have no idea who's behind. Yeah.
Correct.
So one, what is this? what kind of things should our audience be careful of? Red flags. Okay, and I'll come to the second question, which is a checklist of what we should look out for before we take a loan. Okay, so first question, red flags.
Right. So on the apps itself, one, go for trusted apps, right? Whether it's website or mobile app, look at either the Play Stores, wherever you have the app, you are downloading the app. Look at the history of the app, how long it has been in operation, what kind of reviews are there, how many downloads are there, what kind of reviews, like good reviews, bad reviews, both sides, just to understand what kind of situations have come in. And another great thing that I've seen people doing is talk to friends, right? Because you take these decisions like in closed door, you may not be aware of what you're not aware. By talking to people, you can become more aware. So it's always good to speak, right? Don't just get influenced by influencers because you don't know how trusted they are. Don't just go influenced by some website which talks about these are top 5 apps because they may be purchased for, right? So it's better that you do your own research and then take a decision. And stick to 1 or 2 BNPL players that you find most trusted. You don't have to really go and sign up with 5 different ones because they are not going to offer you very different solutions. Just stick to 1 or 2, whichever you think are the most appropriate ones, and stick to them. I think that would be the best strategy to work with. And the most important one is to look at who's the lender behind it. Because the lender is the real key. If you default, the lender is going to come after you, not the platform which is actually offering you this. And that is where the important thing comes in. Look at a trusted lender, maybe a bank who's really behind it, or a popular non-banking company like an NBFC which might be behind it, and look at their credentials. And that should really give you a comfort that, okay, this is the platform that I want to work with, and this is the BNPL that I will subscribe to.
Folks, please be very careful of originator and lender. Both can be very different in this era. Originator is probably an app that you signed up for who offers you various options for purchasing. You never know who's behind it, but the lender is a guy who's actually giving you the loan, right, if I've understood it correctly.
Absolutely.
Okay. A checklist for our... Let me put it this way, that what kind of a person is BNPL ideal for as a first product? What should I know before I sign up for a BNPL? Aisa nahi ho ki I have plans to buy a lot of things and I don't know where I'm going. So who is BNPL ideal for?
So I think one, we have to look at our needs and plan it out. Don't put everything together. Because the company who's giving you money, the lender, may approve you, say, for a 1 lakh limit or a 1.5 lakh limit. That does not mean that you have to spend and utilize everything. Second, that limit is not expiring. It will be available. Sometimes there are advertisements which say you will miss out if you don't purchase today. And we get pre-approved offers as well from several players who say this is available only for next 30 days or next 15 days. These offers will keep coming. If your profile is good, if you have good intent, if you take the loan and repay, these offers will keep coming. So these demands will not really vanish. So one needs to be comfortable about that. Second thing is that once I pick up all of these decisions, I decide on what is most important to me. Don't go for every aspiration to be fulfilled right now. I think that's one trap that I see a lot of us getting into, and I've done that when I had hairs.
But all of us did that.
You mature with time, right? So that's one important element, right? And when you decide to use BNPL, do all your math, right? If you don't have insights, take an expert help, right? There are enough experts available who can guide you about loans, about your finances, whoever your wealth advisor is, consult them. Because they will be the right people who can tell you what makes sense for you, what kind of aspirations that you should fulfill right now, what you can delay. Focus more on your needs or your potentially low-hanging wants. Don't go for very, very expansive wants. So I think that will allow you to choose and prioritize. Then do the math to understand what kind of costs are incurred, whether this is the best offer for you. Do you want to take BNPL, whether the discounts are making sense, what kind of extra costs that you may incur. Look at what kind of penalties will be there. Look at that finances for next 4 to 6 months to make sure that your finances will cover for this. There's no unexpected finance that's going to, unexpected expense that may come in. So look at all of that and then take a decision. And that I think is true for every kind of loan that you take. For BNPL, it's much more important because it's so easy to take it.
So folks, that's it. The offers will always be tempting, but be disciplined. Never go beyond your needs and don't be tempted because there'll always be something else to buy. Aspirations are endless. But be disciplined, and once you do take the BNPL, remember it's going to impact your credit score, and always repay on time.
Absolutely.
With
That's most important.
Yeah, be disciplined about that.
Yes. Be disciplined, repay on time, and don't go after everything.
Yeah, no free lunches as always, folks. That is it. That is a wrap on today's episode of Mind Your Karza. My guest, Parijat Garg, Digital Lending and Fintech Consultant. Parijat, thank you so much for doing this for our audience.
Thank you very much. It was really great to be here.
Great to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.